Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. I hope you're doing well. I had been working on a video talking about The Last Samurai. That will still be coming out. I just wanted to make this quick video after I did a little bit of research on this one historical figure that I thought everybody should know about. Who are we talking about today? Why, it's Violet Jessop, of course. Wait, who's Violet Jessop, I hear you asking? Well, let's begin. First, I need to acknowledge that Violet Jessop is a badass name. I can see a superhero using that as their alias, or a pro wrestling cowgirl character. I'm Violet Jessop with the fastest fist in the land. Okay, I'm gonna be serious now. The short version of her story is that she survived the sinking of the Titanic and the Britannic, and also the collision between the Olympic and the warship HMS Hawke. She must have been made of Teflon. I am going to go more in depth into her story, but first I want to give some technical and background information for this tale. The Olympic class of ocean liners was made up of 3 ships, the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Britannic. Each were almost copies of each other with updates to each ship as it came out. The first to be completed was the namesake of the ships, the Olympic. Violet started her career with the White Star Line while serving on the Olympic. In September 1911, the Olympic and the HMS Hawke collided, causing serious damage to both ships. The Olympic was then sent to dry dock for repairs, and in April 1912, Violet was transferred to the Titanic as a stewardess, having about a year and a half of experience. Now, everybody knows the events of the Titanic, so I'm not going to go too much into the details of the events that night. In the early morning hours of April 15, 1912, Violet assisted the first and second class passengers to prepare to go out to the freezing top decks. She was ordered to go to the top deck and help the passengers who did not speak English. They had also hoped that Violet's calm demeanor would demonstrate to the passengers how to react to the situation. She eventually was ordered to get into Lifeboat 16, and as she was lowered, someone handed her a baby asking her to save them. She kept care of the child until they reached the Carpathia. Then on the deck of the Carpathia, a woman ripped the child from her arms and ran off with them. As World War I broke out, the British government requisitioned many oceanic vessels and turned them over to the British Navy. The mostly finished Britannic was designated as a hospital ship to bring soldiers from the front lines in the Middle East back to Western Europe to receive further medical treatment. It was given a paint job of white with red crosses and a single green stripe. At the time, this was internationally recognized as a designation of a hospital vessel. When war broke out, Miss Jessop became a nurse and was stationed on the Britannic due to her years of service already as a stewardess. I do want to give a huge shout out to the YouTube channel Titanic, Honor and Glory, because some of the following footage comes from their recreation of the sinking. If you haven't heard of them before, I highly recommend you check out their channel. They're a group of historians who are making a video game that's an exact digital replica of the Titanic that you can visit, and they also recreate the sinking of the Titanic every year, marking the anniversary. This is not sponsored, I just want to show the love here. On November 21st, 1916, the ship was empty of patients and only had crew and medical staff aboard, which came to approximately 1,066 people. Had the ship been filled with patients returning from the front lines, this disaster could have been far worse. At 8:12 a.m., the ship was traveling just off the Greek island of Kea when it detonated a mine that had been left by a German submarine about 4 weeks prior. Many were having breakfast when the ship was struck. It left a huge hole in the starboard hull and warped the ship, snapping the Marconi wires above, leaving the ship unable to communicate with other ships. Violet was having breakfast at this time. I have to imagine she rolled her eyes and aloud said, "Oh no, here we go again," after hearing the explosion. You know what she did though? She's now an expert at surviving disasters at sea. She said to a colleague she was eating with, "I'm going to my quarters to get my toothbrush. I didn't have it last time." I hope that was a damn good toothbrush and that she treasured it for the rest of her days. Now the Britannic was about 2.5 miles off the coast when it hit the mine. They still had control of the ship, and Captain Charles Bartlett ordered the ship to go as close as the shore as possible. He kept the ship at full speed until they couldn't put off evacuation any longer. The bow of the ship was quickly filling with water, which pulled the ship down. Captain Bartlett also ordered to not let any lifeboats go yet because they were moving too fast and it was not safe to launch them. One group who had gathered on the stern of the ship ignored this order and launched 2 of the lifeboats. As the bow was moving closer to the waterline, this was raising the stern of the ship just as much. The propellers were now completely exposed above the waterline and sucking the lifeboats right into it. When everyone in the two boats realized what was happening, it was already too late. You know who one of the people in the lifeboat was? It was Violet Jessop, all right. She only jumped from the lifeboat moments before it was destroyed by the propeller. In her memoir, she described the event, saying she felt something hit the top of her head, where her hair is thickest, and it just bumped her. She had never learned how to swim, and then she felt an arm grab her by the top of the head and brought her above the surface again. But when she looked, the arm was actually severed off. Of the 1,066 souls on the Britannic that day, there were only 30 deaths. All 30 of the deaths were people who were in those two lifeboats. Violet was the only survivor of the propeller. She bobbed in the water long enough to be pulled in by another boat. The ship went down about 55 minutes after the impact. The 882-foot ship actually sunk in 400 feet of water. The bow had made contact with the ocean floor while the stern of the ship was still above the water. When she fell, Britannic fell onto her starboard side, and there she sleeps to this day just off the coast of Greece. Now, after surviving the accident with the Olympic, the sinking of the Titanic, and the sinking of the Britannic, you'd think Violet would have considered a career change, but you'd be wrong. In 1920, she was hired again as a stewardess by the White Star Line, and she worked for the company until she retired in 1950. This woman's career is one that should be known about. She should have been featured in James Cameron's Titanic movie. I plan on picking up her memoir and giving it a good read-through. I wonder what else she might have gone through on land. And I thought this was someone who was worth knowing about. Well, that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you all are doing wonderful. Take care and bye for now.